Would I be the a-hole for hiring security to kick sibling out of my wedding? Hang on, this is a long story that requires the background information. I, 34F, got engaged to my childhood crush, 36M, last year. About a month after getting engaged to my sister, 38F, we'll call her Lynn, and her BF, 48M, Kevin, asked if they could move into our basement since they both had got a job transfer 15 minutes from where we live until they found a house. We said sure since we had ample room and hardly used our basement, except for parties. They moved in, and everything was fine for about 6 months. 6 months into them living with us, my fiancé and I are heavy into the wedding planning and figuring out all the logistics that go along with it. I had asked my sister to be my MOH since we had been really close and she had been by my side when I lost my husband about 3 years earlier. I would ask my sister questions or vent to her about things with the wedding, especially the guest list since it was growing out of control. My fiancé and I's family are both huge and would be about 600 people if we invited everyone. Lynn has always been very blunt about her opinions and told me that I was being rude to all of our potential guests since we would not have time to spend with each person. Keep in mind, we had not finalized the guest list. That was just our estimated number before knocking people off. In the next few months, after having a conversation about the guest list, she starts making little comments about things I'm doing wrong or ways I'm being a bitch for the wedding. I usually just brush them off my shoulder because she has not helped in the day-to-day planning since she's too busy and is making assumptions at this point. My sister eventually stepped down as my MOH, stating that she didn't want to be involved in planning a wedding that is going to go bad, so I had asked my cousin, Becky, to be my new MOH. Becky happily and excitedly agreed and stepped in to help me with every detail, even the boring stuff as my sister called it. My cousins helped with narrowing down the guest list, figuring out decorations, not needed for my sister, going dress shopping, wear your last dress, and printing and making invitations. Waste of fucking time, my sister said. One night, after all the invitations were printed, my cousin and sister-in-law came over to fold paper and stuff envelopes. My sister walks upstairs, looks at all of us in disgust, and says that we are wasting our time. That was it. That was my last straw. I sat there trying not to cry and silently folded the paper until my sister-in-law spoke up and asked if that's how it's been lately. Begrudgingly, I said, yes, and I'm just about over it all. They gave me a little pep talk to get me to refocus, and we finished the invites. A few days later, my SIL calls me while I'm working. I work from home, and asked how my mental state is and everything my sister has said and done. As I'm explaining it and venting, my sister walks into my office and explodes of fury that I've only seen in movies because I'm lying about the invite situation and that I don't need a second wedding when I've already had one, and so on. I calmly ask her to leave my office, which she does after I asked 5 times, and I proceed to break down after she storms out shouting that she and my mom wouldn't be in attendance. Later that afternoon, my dad calls me, yes, daddy's girl here, and asks what happened this morning and why my mom isn't invited to the wedding. I, super confused, asked him why he thought that, which he proceeded to tell me everything my sister had told my mom and how I uninvited them all from the wedding. I told him that wasn't true, and he asked if my fiancé and I wanted to go to dinner with them, mom and dad, that night to talk everything through. I said sure, and we met for dinner. At dinner that night, I'm venting to my parents when all of a sudden my mom starts crying and walks out of the restaurant. Then my dad tells me that Lynn told my mom that I didn't want her there for my wedding, which is not true. So I chase after my mom as she's walking down the highway and tell her to get in. I drive back to the restaurant to pick up the men and go home. At home, my dad wants us all to sit down to work things out and talk about what happened, which I'm open to cause I thought it would all just blow over and calm down, but instead got worse. My sister and her BF come up and proceed to berate me and my fiancé for the next 3 hours about how horrible I am. I don't need a second wedding. I'm selfish, and I'm being a bitch for planning it the way I'm planning it. I sat there quietly most of the time just listening until they started in on my fiancé and said that they feel bad for him and that he should think twice before marrying someone so selfish. At that point, I stood up for him and asked him if I was actually that bad to him, and if he wanted an out, he had it. He refused and said that I wasn't any of those things. My sister kept going on, with my dad defending me with every statement, while my mom sat there quietly. At the end of her blow-up, I asked for examples as to how I was all of those things, and she couldn't give me an answer except to tell me that my entire family hated me and thought the same. At that point, I wasn't going to sit there and listen anymore, and I got in my car and drove to my SIL's house to spend the night and cool down. The next day, I'm so depressed I turned off my phone and just drove around to think and clear my head. That day, I also called off all wedding planning since I didn't want to do anything wrong. Weeks go by and my sister and I haven't spoken a word to each other, but I find out from my dad that they finally found a house and would be moving out. We were relieved cause with them came 3 dogs that bark at my every moment during work hours and 2 cats that refuse to use the litter box. So I was excited to 1 have my whole house back, 2 clean the basement so that it doesn't smell like animal excrements, and 3 wouldn't be a stressful living environment. My fiancé and I had a talk that we would resume the wedding planning once they moved out because at that point, I could barely be home and function. I would go to my in-laws to work or study and would sleep in our camper if my fiancé was working late. A week before they were to move out, my parents, fiancé, and I all go out to dinner again to start making plans and things we needed to do for the wedding, and all goes fine. Later that night, Lynn calls my mom and my dad overhears them complaining about my wedding. Which, keep in mind, neither have been overtly involved in, so they don't know much of what is going on other than the food. Before they hang up on the call, my dad starts yelling at both of them saying that it's not their wedding, it's ours, and that all they need to do is keep their opinions private and offer support. At that point, I had just started feeling better about the wedding as a whole and got back into the planning. Once my dad told me that, I went right back to my hole of crying every day, not eating, and barely functioning. A couple more weeks go by and my sister and BF starting packing up to move out. One day, I come home to my brother helping them, but keep to myself since there's been no bad bloods with him, and figured I'd talk to him later. That weekend, we are at a friend's wedding, and I get a plethora of texts from my brother telling me that I hope I'm okay with having a wedding with no family, and that I'm a bitch for kicking my sister out. At this point, my in-laws are doing most of planning cause I'm scared of if I do anything, another family member is going to come striking at me and try to ruin something. Either way, I'm not super excited for this wedding at all because it's been completely stained. My in-laws keep telling me that it's only happening because Lynn is jealous that I'm getting married a second time and found happiness when her BF won't even propose. So would I be the a-hole if I were to hire a few people to keep my sister and her BF from entering my wedding just so I can have one day of peace with my new husband? Update: I did send everyone in my family a text explaining my side of things, my feelings, and that if they wanted a relationship it would be up to them. But that I'm not dealing with any narcissistic behaviors, and at the first sight of that, I'm out. The only person to reach out after that text was my mother. She wants our family to join a group therapy, and honestly, I'm not too sure about that. I think therapy is great, but if you're an adult, you should know how to communicate and have a conversation. Doesn't seem like it would be very fruitful in my opinion. Thank you to all of those that supported me going and see. Ever since she's been out of our house, I've started becoming me again. So it's only for the best for me to have no relationship for the time.